Jerusalem. And yeah, so we're counting the Omer, and we're doing this 49 count to get to Shavuos, where we're going to get the Torah. And when we get the Torah, we got to be a vessel for that. And so what we're doing each week is we're fixing our vessel. Every week is the fixing of the vessel, fixing the vessel. And so last week was fixing the vessel. What part of the vessel? It was the part of the vessel that's called flow. And what that means is you have to be able to connect. That's connection, simple connection. And it's like, it's like the word spiritual. The spirit is the connection. The ritual is the structure. And this week's all about the structure. That's what we're doing. This week is the structure. And so let's go through it. So what does structure mean? Well, the structure means a bunch of things. It generally means saying no in our own personal lives. Like, it's the ability to say no. It's the ability to make sure that things are protected properly. So like for example, the door on your house is a no. Abraham was known for having a 4-doored tent with no doors on any tent. So there's no doors on any side. So it's like, no wasn't in the vocabulary, it seems, when it comes to Avram Avinu. So Abraham's got this no-doored tent, while Isaac, who's known for structure, he had a 4-doored tent that all doors were in. They were all intact. And anyway, so structure has to do with your home is structure. The mug holding my tea is structure. The liquid is flow. Now, there are people who are overly structured, and that works more or less with Torah, because you need a lot of it to keep the Torah. So that's not it's not a big deal if you're overly structured. And there are people who are, but if you're understructured, watch out. If you're understructured, you're going to be in trouble. And so, like, for example, holding down a job when you're understructured, not going to be great. Dealing with the structure subjects in school, the sciences, math, things like that, that's going to be a challenge. So what we're doing this week is we're fixing our relationship to structure in the world, in order that when we get to the 50th, to Shavuos, that when the Torah is given to us, that we are whole. So let's talk about the aspects of structure. So the first aspect of structure, which would have been a couple days ago, was called Chesed Shebegevura, which means the flow in the structure. And what does that mean? That would mean lots of Gevura, extra Gevura. Now, extra Gevura might be a good idea when, for example, your kid just tried to cook his cheese toast in your VHS machine. Now, of course, no one knows what a VHS machine is, but believe me, it's not a place to cook, not a place to make cheese toast. So the meaning, if your child has misbehaved, so then you're going to be doing more flow of you're going to be doing more gevura. Now, which would be positive, that would be an appropriate use, because the kid needs punishment now. And if you don't want to mess up your kid and not punish appropriately. So it's time for more gevura in that situation. There are times where someone could be too gevura, in that where you got to fix it is a situation where we recently had a situation in my house where my daughter overdid her Zoom meeting. So when I hear someone overdid her Zoom meeting with her friends, so my sense was like, hey, she needs this a lot, whereas the kids waiting for their turn were more punitive. They were ready for more gevura on her, more, not to be so connected. Remember, flow is connection. And so they were feeling very disconnected from her. And so I explained to them, I sat with them and I said, if you think about her personality, like she's been starving of her relationship since the coronavirus began. and she really needs this. She probably didn't even notice the time went by at all. She wasn't trying to hurt anybody. She was just trying to get some air, and I was trying to cool off their overly, disconnection that they were feeling, so that our family would be back to balance, together when there was some resentment there.
How long did you try?
Now the 10. So then there was what's another example of being overly gevura? I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'll give one more example of overly gevura is someone who is so into the halacha, let's say, that they missed the experience. They just missed the experience altogether. So let's say Seder night. Seder night, there are a lot of details, Passover Seder night. And, you got to know those details. And there's a lot of details regarding just making your house kosher for Pesach and what you bring to your Pesach table, what's allowed in the house that week, and what did you do with the whiskeys and stuff? Did you sell them properly or get rid of them? And anyway, there's a lot of detail, and there's the whole Seder night itself, and how much matzah you got to eat, and what amount of time, and everything. So too much gevura would be being so in the details that you missed the entire experience. You weren't touched in the way that our sages had in mind that someone should be touched during the actual experience. The next night was gevura shebegevura, and that's a very good attribute. And that is where you're looking at how much structure and structuring it appropriately, and that's really that's really the essence of this week. And the essence of this week is to be applying the brakes where you need to apply the brakes in your life. So an example of that would be, a lot of people are out of work this week and the last month or whatever, and so they got to go shopping. And it could be the shopping list needs to look different. You can't just, you can't just overly, you can't do flow of gevura. I mean, you can't do yet the first thing I talked about because you got to eat, that'd be not shopping. But now we got to shop, but we got to shop with that limitation in mind. And then the next day 3 of the count would have been what's called Tiferes shebegevura, and that means that you really have everything balanced in that, like to the point of, it'd be a great example of Tiferes shebegevura would be writing out lists of what you're going to eat for the next week. Because how if you shop without any clue of the menus, you're just going to buy so much random stuff for all the what ifs, and if your income is limited, especially during the coronavirus, it's limited. So then it'd be more appropriate to create menus, one major meal a day, and have those menus down. Write down what you got to buy to create those meals, and that's called Tiferes. That's the third day. That would be Tiferes shebegevura. And that means that, we're going to limit this. How are we going to limit this? Exactly according to the need. And what's the need? Well, we got this many mouths to feed. And if you have, it could be someone else comes over, like maybe the elderly person these days, people don't have elderly people coming over, but let's just say that these are the people you've been isolated with, and they come some meals, they don't come to all meals. So maybe it's a family, or maybe you're taking care of another family. So that's all part of the planning. But the way it works is this third attribute, which we'll be discussing next week in detail, looks towards the recipient. What's the recipient? I guess the cupboards of the kitchen are going to be the recipient of all this. And it looks towards what would be the appropriate, what it the recipient, which may be our cupboards or maybe us eating the meals, tell how much limitation while buying that food to make sure we get it very specifically. So that would be menus. Menus would be the third day of Gevura, is limiting what it is we're going to buy. The next day is called Netzach Shebe. Netzach Shebe Gevura. And Netzach Shebe Gevura would be to stay consistent with it, meaning like you did a whole shopping based on the menus, and then what'd you do? You just like 3 days later you go split, let's say a restaurant. I don't know if your restaurants are open during the virus. Ours aren't, but you just say, what, to hell with it, and you take the whole family out for like a $300 meal, in a nice restaurant. It's like what? So that would be, I don't know why I gave that example. That was a really bad example. That would be an example of chesed, of netzach sheba chesed. I'm sorry. What we're talking about here is netzach sheba gevura would be to be able to lock that down, meaning the menus and the shopping and the budget over time. So you'll notice like certain people will, probably everyone listening to me at one point or another sat down and made a budget and then proceeded to blow it off totally. You understand? So that's the opposite of what we're developing here, which is called netzach sheba gevura, is that you made the budget, you kept the budget. You stayed with it, and you could go back a month later and look at all your expenses and see they reflected the original plan, and that's netzach sheba gevura. The next one is hod sheba gevura, and hod sheba gevura means that you really stayed focused on the whole plan, and that would be continuing through. Let's say you made a budget for a month of meals. And you bought a month of meals. Hod sheba gevura would mean that you really stuck with it. So then what happens is, someone says, hey, it's Uncle Joe's birthday. Let's why don't we have over the family? And that would be like, that's a beautiful idea, but it's not sticking with the budget. And now all of a sudden, you're back in the market and stuff. Hod would be sticking with it, staying focused. Now I know that sounds a lot like netzach, but it's not. Netzach sheba gevura is that we kept the plan all month. That we could look back and see that we kept the plan all month of all the limitations we put on our budget. Hod is in the day-to-day life, in your day-to-day life, you're sticking with things. It's on the detail level. You're staying laser beamed in on what was the plan, and how are we limiting ourselves and sticking with it. It'd be an example of Hod would be an example. Let's say someone had a penchant for they have a penchant for ice cream, but they've taken on not to eat regular milk. They only eat Chalav Yisrael, Jewish milk. Yeah, they'll only eat Jewish supervised milk. So they take that on, and so that's a limitation. They're putting on the brakes on regular milk. Now, what happens? They go on a 2-week vacation in a place that has, there's plenty of ice creams available with a kosher certificate, but none of them are Chalav Yisrael. So it's just regular milk, and kosher but regular, not Jewish supervised milk, and so someone who lacks hod would just blow it off. He'd be like, hey, we're on vacation, God understands, and next thing you know, they one of the meals of their 2-week vacation, they went for the chocolate ice cream and blew off. So they blew it off. And so that is a lack of focus. Another one is guarding your eyes. So guarding your eyes is is Gevura. That's limiting what you're looking at. You definitely want to limit what you look at in life. And but like when you're having a weak point and you're thinking, I think I'm not, I'm not gonna be able to survive this, so I'm just gonna have a little peak. So that's a lack of hod. Hod is I said I'm not, meaning hod shebegevura. I'm said I'm not. I'm limiting this, and I'm gonna stay focused on this. I'm staying limited on that particular thing, and so that's hod. And the next is Yesod Shebegevura. Yesod Shebegevura is the next attribute, and that would be the 6th day of the count. Yesod Shebegevura of this week. And what you'd be fixing there is Yesod is always the interface, the USB cable interface to the final thing, which was our cupboards when we talked about shopping. But it's the actual interface of the whole thing. And that interface would be it'd probably be the meals being served on the table. It's like you delivered, like you said you're not, and you're not going to overshop, or you're not going to look at whatever that was you thought of looking at, and so it's not the actual fruition, but it's the final connection to that thing which you've decided that you're going to hold back with. I'm not explaining this great. Sod Shebegevura. Let's say it like, I'll give you I was trying to keep it in the example, but I'm going to leave the example and go with this instead. So Yesod Shebegevura would be, I've got this idea that I want to give the class, but the problem is the idea is way beyond the class. But what I realize about this class is that this entire class is really into football. And so what I do is I realize, what? The only way I'm going to be able to give this idea to the class is through a football story. I'm going to have to talk about it like a football play or something like that. So that's going to be the proper USB cable to get this into the class. Now, so how would that relate? How would me kind of dressing it? It's like I'm dressing the idea into a football story. So how would that relate to Gevura? Is that I never tell them the idea. I never tell them the idea. All I did was tell the story the whole time. They were just listening to the story. It was like a campfire story. They were just listening to the story, and it was 6 down and 20 yards to go, and it was the championship game, and everyone's listening, and they're all just like totally connected. But I never told them the idea. I limited it, and I limited it, and I limited it, and I limited it. And I made sure though that in order for them to receive it, I squelched it down to this idea so that it would click in properly, and then they would get it, and then they could walk away after the story with the idea that I wanted to share. I didn't just share an idea. I locked it into to that analogy. Okay, everyone. That is it for this week, and sorry, not this week. That's it for our discussion of Gevura for the week of Gevura. And now we're all fixing how we limit ourselves. Oh, you might be wondering why I didn't do the last one. The 7th one is Malchus Shebegevura. That's more just the in the vessel. That's more like the base of the vessel, and it's the point of it all, and it's not so much our involvement. It's just us staying focused on what it is we're trying to achieve in life. Okay, so shalom everyone, and blessings and simcha and nachas.